Alrighty, Community Bible Study. How's it going, guys? I just wanted to step in and put in another installment for the lesson that we were studying last Sunday. So bear with me. My computer screen seems to be dull today. I don't know. We'll see what happens. So what I wanted to do today was I wanted to really touch base on just basic review of what we talked about in the last video, and then move forward into just discussing Paul's transition and him basically putting up an argument as to why he has the authority to say that the gospel that he preaches is the only gospel that is the only gospel. And so what I wanted to kind of do is just rehash a little bit. I was telling you in yesterday's video, I was telling you that Paul is transitioning from really strongly stating, hey guys, this is the only gospel, the one that I told you is the only gospel, and here's why. And he transitions into that. Like I said, he stated that the gospel that he shared with the Galatians people was not of man. And we talked about the importance, why Paul felt it very important to explain to them why it was not of man. And it had a lot to do with his history. And now today we're going to be looking more at Galatians chapter 1, verses 13 and 14. And this is where Paul starts going in and laying out the ground cover of his testimony, so to speak. Just his life and who he is and where he comes, why he has the authority to share like he does. As I was really kind of looking at this, excuse me, I got to really thinking back. And I posed a question. I'm trying to remember if I posed this in the last video or not, but I posed the question, do you guys remember what it was like before your conversion? Do you remember what it was like before you gave your life over to Christ? I thought about this as I was reading these verses, and I was looking back on my life, and for me it was kind of a twofold. There was a time where I went forward and went and gave my life to Christ that way, but then there was a change moment for me, and I think for a lot of us there's a change moment. There's a part of us that says yes to Christ, but yet we're still kind of holding on. But then there's a moment in time where it becomes real, where the decision that we make becomes real. Just like what I discussed about Paul on Damascus Road, and when Christ interacted with him, there was a moment that it became real to me as well. When Christ interacted with me, just briefly, and at some point in time, I would really love to go in further detail, but for me, Christ became real in a moment where I had pretty much given up all hope in my life. Many years ago, there was a moment where I pretty much felt like, my life was worthless, and I just kind of was ready to give it all up, throw in the towel. And Christ came to me in an alleyway, above and beyond what the four attackers were. And in that moment, it became real that God really still had a plan for my life, and that Christ was a part of that. And from that moment on, it kind of snowballed into what you see now, and some of the things that I do in missions, and just some of the things I do was more led out of what Christ had done for my life and that direct experience that I've had with Jesus. And so that's where Paul kind of is placing it, and just thinking about that. I was thinking about some of the things, what I was like in the past, and really I could almost resonate with what Paul was sharing in these next couple verses. And forgive me here for a minute. I have to get my pages up here. So the verses are this: "For you have heard of my former life in Judaism, how I persecuted the church of God violently and tried to destroy it. And I was advancing in Judaism beyond many of my own age among my people. So extremely zealous was I for the traditions of my fathers." So here you're getting a glimpse of who Paul was before he became a Christian, before he became a follower of Christ. And I I can, and I don't know, like I said, I don't know if you remember what it was like for you, but I can tell you, I can attest that there was a point in time where I was an enemy. I was an enemy of God. I was persecuting God. There was a point in my life where I felt like I was hopeless, and during that time, I was very mad. I was very mad at God. It was after a point where I thought I knew Him, and I was very mad at the situation that I was in, and I was basically blaming Him for it. Is really how it goes. But that kind of gives you the idea of where we can draw a line here, being an enemy of God or even persecuting God. You see how Paul is just putting the claim out there that he was a persecutor of the church. Anybody that came across, and I mentioned this in classes, anytime he had the opportunity to persecute a Christian, a follower of Christ, he was willing to do it. He held the coats and he signed off on the stoning of Stephen and during that time, and he was eagerly glad to do it, and he was welcoming the idea of taking out another follower of Christ. So much so that on his way on Damascus Road, that experience that I just spoke about, he was on his way to go kill more Christians. He actually went to the head Pharisee and said, "Here, sign off on this. I know there's a bunch of Christians over here at this little place called Damascus, and I want to go take care of that. I want to go ahead and destroy that." And he was very well known because he was very good at what he did. So so that kind of where we're drawing in. He's really laying out the groundwork. The people knew him for what he did. And I often really think about that, and I start really questioning, what, do people know me? How do people know me? As we'll learn more and more about Paul and a couple other videos here following it, when he goes and starts interacting with Christians, they fear him because they know his reputation. And so it really begs the question, guys, what is your reputation among the people, among others, outside of this? Do you go into work and do people look at you and think, yeah, you're just one of the other guys, and it really doesn't change anything? Or do they look at you and say, you know what, that person's truly a follower of Jesus because of how they talk or how they interact with me, or the fact that, they told me they were? What is that like for you guys? Think about this. Paul, like I said, when he would go in, people would fear him. We'll look a little bit later. He had to do a lot of discussing things and being tested when he met up with Peter for the first time. People were really scared of him. They had to really, make sure that what he was saying was true. And then on the flip side, people really hated him too. The Pharisees, when they found out he converted to be a Christ follower, well, that was all they needed. They just were ready to kill him. And so he had to deal with some of that as well. And you see that even further on as you read more about Paul's adventures, if you will, and some of his missionary journeys, because he went all over the place to plant churches and just was a proponent of advancing the gospel during his time. And so, we really kind of want to chew on during this video, during this time, just what is it like for us? Are we walking to people and they're looking at us going, you know what, there is something different about him that we don't see in anybody else? And they know because of how we talk or because of what we have told them that they know that it's because of Christ? Or do they look at us and they think, you know what, he's just another guy that I would see in a bar or in the street, and there's nothing different about him? You see, there was something different about Paul when he walked up to them. There was a reason why the disciples knew him, and it was because of how he interacted with them. Think about this, guys. Today, or after you've watched this video and just kind of chewing on this, and Think about what it was like before you gave your life to Christ. And think about how your life has changed. There comes a time where we really have to come face to face with just that. And guys, if you can look at your life and you can say, well, there was not an interaction, or I don't know what you mean by a change in my life, then let me know. Let's talk about that. Let's kind of hash that out and really kind of play around with that, because, it's something that we really need to take note. The bigger, broader story of Paul is the fact that he had a one-on-one encounter with Jesus Christ. And if we call ourselves Christians and we call ourselves followers of Christ, at some point in time we've had to have that one-on-one encounter. And guys, if you haven't had that one-on-one encounter, please let me know. Nothing brings me more greater joy than to actually share how Christ has impacted my life and how he can impact yours. You guys, until next time, have a great, wonderful evening, day, whenever you're watching this. And remember, if you want to message me privately about this, hit the button up top there. If you want to throw down a comment with some of the questions and you have some questions regarding this, let me know in the comments. And always, always, always hit like. The like button, it should be on one side or the other. Hit that like button. Let me know you're listening. All right, guys? I'll talk to you later.